And you can only cover up the chaos and the feelings that are going on underneath the surface for so long before they're going to bubble up and the overthinking coping mechanism is no longer going to serve you but start to harm you. And this might look like feeling stuck in anxiety and living in the past instead of the present. I'm Deb Sarah, and I help women identify the beliefs and behaviors that are no longer serving them so that they may create an aligned, magnetic, and authentic life. Let's dive in. Have you ever been told that it's all in your head? As women, we hear this all the time. It might be about our emotions, our fears, very often about our women's issues like our periods, and even overthinking. So what if I told you the root of this was not actually your mind, you're definitely not making it up, and it's actually stemming from your body? When we don't feel safe in our bodies, we can quite often get stuck in our mind, and that might look like the planning, the overthinking, to try and control our fears and worry, control the uncontrollable. And this isn't just about stress, it can quite often be about survival. So today I'm going to show you how to break that cycle, feel more calm, connected, and clear. So here's something that changed everything for me, and something my clients quite often find very, very helpful to understand. Your body remembers what your mind tries to forget. So what does that mean? When we go through a traumatic event, or let's not even use the word trauma, let's go with something that we don't have the tools and resources to cope with at the time, or maybe the support. And so instead of being able to process what's going on, we often store the emotions within our body for later, because at that point of time, we don't have the resources to be able to maybe handle a full breakdown, because if we did process those emotions, it might lead to that full-on breakdown. So the body's quite smart in that way, that it will take the emotions from that event and store it within our system and within our body. This might look like being stored in your muscles, the nervous system, cells of your body, like even your fat cells. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk describes this the best in his book, The Body Keeps the Score. And if you have not read it and you're interested in this topic, I highly recommend that you go off and have a listen or read a bit of the book. He says, trauma isn't just something that happens to you, it lives within you. And so as a result, when we don't feel safe in our bodies, we can actually disconnect from them. This might look like retreating into our minds because it feels safer to overthink than actually feel the feelings. Disconnecting from our body can also feel like just leaving our body, having that blankness and the disconnection. But today we're going to talk about specifically overthinking, which can become a coping mechanism, and as I just said, a way of escaping our feelings when we don't feel ready or safe enough to process them. And while at first overthinking can help us create strategies and planning to move through the world in a way that feels safer, it's actually an illusion of safety because it's covering up the chaos that we feel inside. And you can only cover up the chaos and the feelings that are going on underneath the surface for so long before they're going to bubble up and the overthinking coping mechanism is no longer going to serve you but start to harm you. And this might look like feeling stuck in anxiety and living in the past instead of the present. So let me give you a practical example of what this might actually look like or present like for you in your life. You're sitting at your desk at work and your boss sends you a really vague email, and I can relate to this example for sure. You get this email and all it really says is that we need to talk, come to my office. Your heart sinks and your mind goes into overdrive. Did I mess something up? Am I going to get fired? And it's a spiral of real negative thinking. I mean, how often do you sit there and go, I'm getting a promotion? Probably less than ever. So the mind goes over to the negative side and you start to replay every action that you've taken in the past few weeks, every conversation that you've had, trying to find that answer as to what specifically your boss might want to talk to you about. And as a result, you can't focus on anything else. So your brain isn't actually responding to specifically just that email. It's actually reacting to old survival patterns. And this is why it's focusing on the negative. Maybe in the past, criticism felt like rejection or conflict was really unsafe for you. Your body actually remembers these experiences and imprints them within the body as chemical little reminders. So the heart beating really fast, maybe the sweat, maybe you're breathing up into the chest and you're losing your breath. These are imprints within the body from the past when maybe an experience of the email in the boss's office was actually you getting fired. And so as a protective mechanism, instead of having to really feel into that pain of the past, your brain starts to overthink and think about, why could this be happening? Can I find a solution? And jumping to X, Y, and Z to see what it can do to try and get you out of that body emotional response, which doesn't feel safe, which feels scary and overwhelming, of course. And so it's looking for solutions to get rid of that feeling and create a new feeling, one that feels more positive and more safe. But unfortunately, instead of protecting you, this mechanism is keeping you stuck in a loop, in a cycle. And this is why quite often we can keep repeating patterns from the past. You think you've dealt with a certain emotion, a certain situation. Maybe you have. Maybe you went to talk therapy and you spoke to a therapist and you spoke about how you got fired and how that situation was really uncomfortable for you. And so you think, why is this situation triggering me so much again? And quite often it's because we get stuck in the talking and the overthinking instead of the processing of the body-based patterns that are created as a result of certain situations. Let's dive a little bit deeper into this. So overthinking can happen because your body can be stuck in a certain survival mechanism. So this might look like fight. When you're all amped up and ready to go, it might look like flight, so running away. Maybe you have a fight with someone and you leave the room and you don't want to talk to them. And it might look like freeze. So maybe you just sit there and you allow your boss to scream at you for the next 20 minutes without saying a word. So even when that threat from the past is gone, the body can act like it's still there. So it's not in your head and you're not crazy. There is a reason why when you maybe feel more uncomfortable, you start to overthink. And this is a really interesting thing to start to notice. When is your overthinking more potent? Is it when you're at home bored on the couch? Or is it when you've just been triggered by something that's made you feel unsafe? Maybe this week you start to look at the times when you're overthinking. Your mind is trying to help you. So it's looking at past experiences as a pattern to scan the current environment for danger. It wants to prevent what happened in the past from happening again in the present moment. It's definitely not trying to sabotage you. I know overthinking, I used to overthink all the time, and I have many clients who come to me with this and say, my mind's trying to sabotage me, and get really angry at the overthinking. But when you can take a step back and have compassion and realize this is your way, your body is trying to protect you. The problem is that your mind is coming from a place of limitation based on past experience and only the information and knowledge that it has. So quite often it's creating the fear-based stories instead of realizing that maybe right now you have more tools, more capability, and more support than you did back then when the first initial event occurred. It's not so much grounded in the reality or the present. It can very much be grounded in anxiety and fear. And this is why overthinking can feel so exhausting, because it's not just about the mind, it's also about what's going on within the body at the time, which you're maybe not noticing. Because through the overthinking, you're able to suppress and numb what you're experiencing within the body to focus on something other than maybe the sadness and the grief or the anger that's coming up that you don't feel ready to face. So now you understand why you may be overthinking, that it's not sabotaging you, and that actually overthinking is a way for your body to protect you when it doesn't feel safe enough. Process the emotions that are surfacing within the body. Let's move on to the 3 ways to stop overthinking and calm your mind fast. Number 1 is my favorite, changing your physiology. So when you're triggered, when you start to overthink, you get that email, there's a rush of chemicals through the body, and you're probably going into, as I spoke about, your fight, flight, or freeze state. So what can you do? It's changing the chemicals that are rushing through your body and taking you from that stress state into a calm state. And there's many ways that you can do this, but a really beautiful evidence-based method which you can use comes from Huberman, and it's a breathing technique called the physiological sigh. It's simple, it's effective, and you can do it anywhere, anytime. If you're driving, maybe pull over. I don't ever recommend doing breathing techniques when you're driving because it's not safe. How you do it is you take a breath in, 2 sharp, short inhales through the nose, and then exhale through the mouth. So just like this. Maybe you try that 2 to 5 times and see how your body reacts, see how it feels. Breathwork is really, really powerful in creating quick changes within the physiology, so keep this tool in the tool belt. Step 2 is to acknowledge the fear. Pushing away fear is only going to make it come back more powerfully and stronger. So instead, when the fear comes up, we want to acknowledge it. You might say something like, "Thank you for keeping me safe. I see you." When I first tell my clients this, they think it's so strange that they would talk to themselves in this way. But when you understand that the fears and the overthinking are just different parts of you trying to communicate with you, they're trying to tell you, "Look at me, I'm scared, see me." That's it. When you can acknowledge that fear and say, "I see you," and have compassion for you, instead of really fighting yourself, it can help to reconnect you to yourself and calm those fears instead of adding fuel to the fire. Let's look at it this way. Let's just say that fear is a little part of you, a little child inside you who's having a tantrum. All it wants to do is be heard. When you acknowledge it, it can quite often dissipate the energy and the feelings. And you'll notice just by acknowledging it, you can actually feel a lot better. Sometimes the most simple tools are the most effective. And number 3, I like to take an action to rewire the brain and the neural pathways. So we've done the breathing, we've acknowledged that part of us that's scared and sometimes just needs acknowledgement to feel better. And so number 3 is taking an action. And this might look different to everyone. And I know that at different phases of my life, it's a different action. Sometimes it'll be a thought reframe. So you get the email and you think, "My boss is going to fire me." You take your breath, you acknowledge the fear, and then you might say, "It's okay to be afraid, and I can handle whatever comes my way." Kind of like a mantra. And you can reframe it in any way that feels best for you. You want to create safety in the body. So that's a thought or a reframe that aligns with a truth. We don't want to be saying something that we don't believe because it will feel like we're lying to ourselves. So something as simple as, "I am safe and I can handle whatever comes my way." Whatever feels right for you. For other people, they love to do things like 5 squats or watching a funny video. It really depends where you are. If you're driving, you're going to do something more like the thought reframe. If you are at home, you may go for a walk and call a friend. It's about what action is right for you in that moment. Don't be afraid to trial and error, to try a few different techniques and tools and find what works for you. So we've got number 1, changing your physiological state, which might look like a breathwork technique such as the physiological sigh. Number 2, acknowledging the fear, have compassion. And number 3 is taking an action, like reframing the thought. Your body is not broken and it's not in your head. Everything you're feeling and thinking is there for a reason. If you're stuck overthinking, it is not because you're failing. It's because your mind and body are doing their best to keep you safe. And the good news is there's actionable steps that you can take to help yourself feel better. And this involves reconnecting to your body. If you're ready to take the first steps in reconnecting to your body, I've created a free meditation just for you. And it's designed to help you feel grounded, calm, and safe within your own body. When you feel safe in your body, everything changes. Click the link down below and give it a go. And let me know in the comments what's one small way you're going to reconnect with your body today. Hope you have a brilliant week and find some relief with these 3 tools to help you stop overthinking and calm your mind.